Shazam Fury of the Gods. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Is what I would say if I expected anything out of this film anyways. Let's talk about it. So Shazam Fury of the Gods. I'm gonna just straight up, right, before we even get to the review, get into like what the plot is. I hated this movie. This is hot trash. Like a maggot could gag on this. Like this stinks, right? Stink would say that stunk. Like that is how bad this movie is. This story for Shazam has no base in comics whatsoever. This is a completely made up story from the studio, from the writers. The villains have no base in comics whatsoever. So whenever I learned that, all my expectations went straight out the window because I knew this wouldn't be good. Because with comic book movies, in my humble opinion, I think that the best way to handle them is to take that source material and adapt it to the big screen. I think that's the best way to handle comic book movies in any way, shape, or form, because that's what people want to see. We want to see these stories that we grew up reading or hearing about, and see these comic book pages come to life, from these still images to moving images quite literally on the silver screen. So, plot synopsis for Shazam Fury of the Gods. There's a coven of witches, 3 to be exact, that control different types of magic. These range from chaos, elements, and axes. And what they do is they go after this magical MacGuffin staff with the goal of resurrecting their god realm. The only thing that's in their way, that's the problem, is that there's a huge giant plot hole that this movie just completely ignores. And this movie could be 5 minutes long because there's really nothing stopping these sisters from completing their goal, but yet the movie still exists and it's 2 hours long. I'm not going to spoil anything or say exactly what my problem is, but I would argue that this is the worst comic book movie in easily the past 5 years, and that is a really strong statement, seeing as how Thor: Love and Thunder came out last year. And I could see an argument being made that Thor: Love and Thunder is worse than this movie. However, I think that the saving grace for Thor: Love and Thunder is 1, it has some rewatchable moments, and 2, it's less than 2 hours long. So again, the story is essentially that the coven of witches, that the coven of gods, essentially, they're witches, but they're labeled as gods, want to restore their god realm and want to right the wrongs of history and take back the powers of Shazam from Shazam and the Shazam family. And that's really it. So I feel like the motives here kind of weak, come out of left field. There are attachments to the first Shazam movie as well as attachments to the DCU as a whole, which won't really matter after The Flash. But honestly, after seeing this movie, I don't have a lot of hope for The Flash, and I don't have a lot of hope for Aquaman 2 or Blue Beetle. This really makes me question the integrity of Warner Bros. Studios and DC as a whole with their upcoming film projects. It really makes me hope that The Flash can turn things around, and that Blue Beetle isn't trash, and that Aquaman 2 doesn't turn away crowds either. Because all these projects come out this year, and if they're all this bad, it's really going to hurt the chances that James Gunn can turn this franchise around and right the wrongs of the past. What's the one pro that I can come up with? It doesn't have terrible CGI. This is a CGI fest, but it's not really bad in any way. It does have better CGI than Thor: Love and Thunder, and some of the effects that are done here, some of them do look cool, and nothing really looks terrible. But at the same time, if that's all I can say that's good about this movie, that's a problem. I did not appreciate the characters. I feel like they were all very weak. I did not appreciate the conflicts, as most of them don't make any sense, because like I said, this movie could take 5 minutes to happen. The pacing doesn't work. The editing and the cutting together of the story doesn't really make a lot of sense, because events happen in the beginning that then happen like 20 minutes later. So it feels really disjointed and just disconnected, and it feels like a mess. This movie is a mess. And had I not taken my little brother to go see this movie, I would have just left. I would have just walked out and left and told you, this is terrible and do not waste your change, because this is hot ass. Like this is bad. This is just awful. Like I know I keep saying this is bad and this is awful. Like this is terrible, awful, no good, very, very bad. Like that is the only way that I can describe this film. Again, it just makes me very disappointed in where the DCU was going, and I really, really hope that the next 3 projects that Warner Bros. Has planned to release this year can really stray away from this type of writing and this type of production, because this does not feel planned in any way. This feels like the same level of plot convenience and plot hole as Episode 9 Rise of Skywalker, where if you go and see it, you'll look at this movie and just look and be confused and wonder, how was this even made? How was this approved? How was How is this not one of the projects that was canceled? Because if Batgirl got canceled, why wasn't this? Because this did not deserve to be released at all. No way, shape, or form. That's really all I can say. Those are all my raw thoughts, emotions, and feelings. Obviously, this is gonna be rated worst movie ever. Let's get into numbers for nerds. When it comes to Shazam Fury of the Gods, I gave cinematic a 7 out of 10. Like I said, this does not look terrible. It looks better than Thor: Love and Thunder. It's not great, but for what's on screen, it also doesn't look very bad. Character is a 4 out of 10. This has no real character development. The characters do not change from the beginning of the movie to the end. Conflict is a 6 out of 10. There are fight scenes. Some of them look really nice. Some of them are also really, really bad. So I would argue that for every good conflict in this film, there's also 2 moments that are really, really awful and make no sense whatsoever. Dialogue is a 3 out of 10. There is a line in this movie that as soon as it happened, I wanted to cry. There's so many exposition dumps and just unnatural writing and unnatural relationships. Plot was a 2 out of 10. This movie makes no sense, okay? This could be done in 5 minutes. I'm gonna do a spoiler talk because I wanna get all my thoughts out. So we're gonna do spoilers after we get this number thing wrapped up, okay? 2 out of 10. So just stick around for why I hate this. Suspense was a 5 out of 10. I was only interested in some of the CGI effects in a few of the fight scenes, and even then, I still wanted to leave. However, the total score of this film is below average. This is a 4 out of 10. Worst movie ever. Do not go and see this, please. I feel very conflicted saying don't go and see this because on one hand, I want DC to be successful and I want to see DC rise above, you know, all this bad and be something that's worth watching, right? And develop these stories much like the MCU that we can talk about and have experiences with. But they just keep releasing bad movies and it just breaks my heart because DC arguably has better characters than Marvel, but they just don't know how to use them and just cannot seal the deal on him. Like, they just can't. But yeah, that's gonna be my full review, my full thoughts. Those are the numbers. So, worst movie ever, 4 out of 10. Don't go and see this. I would argue that it's not even worth streaming. This is 2 hours of your time that can be spent watching paint dry, and you probably have a little bit more fun because you'd be able to figure out does paint dry from top to bottom or bottom to top. And I feel like that's something that's worth knowing or worth seeing, and this isn't. If you want to hear a grown man rant about a kids movie though, probably for a duration of time around 7 minutes, stick around. But if you're leaving, I appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by, checking on my opinion, and seeing if you should go see this movie this weekend. You should not. I will say this again. I think I've said this like 3 or 4 times. Don't go and see this. That makes that 5 times now. So, spoiler talk. This movie can take 5 minutes. I've said that like 5 times as well. So, movie opens up, and these 2 witches get a broken stick, and they do nothing with it. They just are bad for no real reason, because originally they're not supposed to be bad. Like, they just want to rebuild their god realm, right? Like, they're not evil, in all honesty. Like, they're really not, because that's one of the conflicts here, is that they don't want to, like, take over Earth, or, like, the human world, or anything like that. They just want to rebuild their own. So why do they just go on a killing spree? It doesn't make sense. That's why plot's so bad. The movie then jumps to Shazam and his family and like their familial issues, which don't get resolved at all because nothing changes by the end of the movie, because you think it's going to be a lesson for Billy Batson to learn that to let people go and that people go on their own ways. But no, they just, at the end of the movie, they all become Shazam again and get their powers back, and nothing really changes. Nobody learns anything. He learns to say mom instead of Rosa. Like, that's not character development. That's just not being an asshole to the people that are raising you. The relationships here in character development are so weak. There's a love subplot here that also makes no sense. A chick that is 6,000 years old falls for a guy that is not even 18 yet and tries to justify it. It's even called out in the film that, like, oh, this is kind of weird. That doesn't make it okay, okay? This is still weird. You're telling me that someone that's 6,000 years old falls in love with someone in like the span of a day? Okay, like they only went on a date at the school cafeteria. I've never fallen in love or had a good conversation with someone at a school cafeteria enough to the point where I would like die for them or like fight my siblings for them, especially not after only seeing them for a day. And I was only like 16 years old at the time. I doubt that another 5,975 years would change anything. I wouldn't do that now. So yeah, that's my point, okay? Anyways, from here, the witches go and fix the staff. It has a spark, right? So here's my thing. Here's exactly why I say this movie could take 5 minutes. They get the staff. They go to the wizard. They fix the staff. At the end of the movie, all that Wonder Woman does is just tap the staff on the ground. Could it, and that revives like their world tree and everything. So could that just solve all their problems? So like none of the conflict with Shazam matters. None of that, literally nothing matters. It's just 2 hours of, it's essentially 1 hour, 55 minutes of filler. Am I wrong for that? Am I dumb for thinking that? Like, am I the only one that's like watching this and being like, wow, that was a waste of time. Like none of this was necessary. Literally none of it. And these 3 6,000+ year-old goddesses don't know that they can just do that. But some woman from Themyscira can figure that out. Like, okay, I guess. No. Like, no. I don't buy it. Okay, I don't buy it. I don't care how you cope and say, oh, it makes sense if you like. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's bad. Another scene that I absolutely hated. This is just turning to a big rant of things that I hated about this film, and that's okay. They tame unicorns. There's a portion or a sequence where the monsters are attacking Earth. All these like Greek mythological monsters, like Chimera and things of that nature, Cyclops, Minotaurs, whatever. And they're like, oh, only thing that monsters fear are unicorns, of course. What else could they fear, right? Whatever. I get the gag. That's okay. It's ridiculous. I'm here for it. But here's the plot twist. Unicorns are super fierce and hate humans, but they love dark caves and ambrosia. So, what are we gonna go do? We're gonna go get unicorns. I'm down for that, you know? I like some silly stuff in my movies. I'm cool with that. But you know what I'm not cool with? I'm not cool with taming mythical creatures with Skittles. And then after that, 5 minutes later, yelling out, taste the rainbow as a unicorn is stabbing something. Like that's corny. Like that is corny. And that's not cool. That's not cool. I almost like died. I cringed at this scene. I was in my seat and I just as a movie, this is how I describe the movie. Started off, I was like, okay. And as it went on, I just sank lower and lower and lower and lower. And whenever that scene happened, I just melted and I cried. I legitimately cried at that scene because I knew at this moment that Scorsese was right. The Marvel movies have killed cinema because this is what is being delivered now within theaters. This is something you can go pay to see. I feel like at some point in time the studio should be like, yeah, it's not worth it. Like this isn't gonna be, because it feels like a cash grab just based on the name of Shazam. Speaking of the name of Shazam, the last subplot that I'm gonna talk about that I felt was very unnecessary is that Shazam doesn't know his name. Like that's something that keeps coming up, is that Shazam doesn't know what his superhero name is. Like there's like Captain Everypower and Philly Fiascos, like that's the joke. But they do reference Captain Marvel, like his name being Captain Marvel. But at the same time, I feel like a kid, right? Because they are kids at the end of the day. Like these are kids looking like adults. I feel like if I were to be over here yelling out Shazam and becoming a hero, I would just call myself Shazam and it not be like a joke for like to be played up, like being like, oh, your name is Shazam. And it's like, why didn't I think of that? Because you're dumb. Because you're dumb. Like that's the only reason why you wouldn't have thought about that. Because the writers think that that'd be funny. And I guess because they think that people that pay for movies or expect like quality content from movies, they expect them to be like really, really stupid and like laugh at that joke, I guess. And I can already picture people like defending this movie and being like, oh, this is a kid's movie. Like you can't expect high quality. Yes, I can. Puss in Boots is a kid's movie and that's a 10 out of 10 film, okay? Cars is a kid's movie. That's a great film, okay? A lot of Marvel movies are debatably kids movies and they're still good films. This is hot trash. And I think that's a problem. I do not support studios pushing that out and expecting to make a payday just from name recognition and this being part of a brand that ultimately hasn't been successful because they keep pushing products out like this. I touched on this on the non-spoiler section of this review, which has turned into like an angry rant of some sort. I feel like a very, very diet Angry Joe right now. I don't know, and I'm not sure whether or not I have any hype, because this was not on my anticipated movies list. But things that were The Flash and Blue Beetle. I was anticipating those. Those are both in my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2023. When I released that video in early January, I did not expect to hate Shazam this much. And I was very excited to see the return of Michael Keaton's Batman and just where the Flashpoint Paradox story could be taken. But I was also very much anticipating Blue Beetle because that's something that's not recognized in like popular media or in mainstream media. And I think it'd be very, very cool to see arguably lesser known or more niche hero get the spotlight, especially whenever they're a person of color. And after seeing this movie, my faith in Warner Bros. And the production quality that they can bring and that they're going to produce for the rest of the year has come way down. I'm still holding out for The Flash because I know and I've heard screenings of that movie have been good. But Blue Beetle, I'm really on the fence about, and I'm really worried that that'll be a terrible movie or one that just does not stick the landing in any way, shape, or form. I doubt that it'll be as bad as this one, but I still don't think that it's going to end up good in any way. And that also stands for Aquaman 2 of this year. I don't have a lot of hype for Aquaman 2 because I didn't much like the first one. I felt like the first one was too busy. But I also think that the sequel will not be great either. And I really wish they would just can those projects. I know they put a lot of money into it, and so they won't, and they technically can't because they will lose so much money based on like what they put into these. I think for the brand as a whole, it would be better to shelve these terrible projects and only make those quality content movies and products like, say, The Batman, or say working on James Gunn's verse and focusing in on those and putting funds into those projects to make them as best as they can and as strong as they can, because it's very debatable as to whether or not DC even has a future because of how long it has been an unsuccessful franchise. And I think that supporting films like this, going out and seeing them, giving them money, and like showing any type of appreciation for projects like this with quality like this is just bad. And it'll continue a never-ending cycle of getting into the money printing machine that is big franchises, and the investment that is given is just not reciprocated. The expectation that is given and the quality that is received just do not match up. I just don't support that kind of business model or like this type of strategy at all. That's gonna be all my thoughts though. Sorry that got really rambly there at the end. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Shazam. I had a lot of pent up rage and aggression towards this movie because it's a rough one. What I'm gonna end this off on is don't see it. I thank you so much for clicking on this video, taking time out of your day to watch me talk about movies, comic book movies on top of that, even if they're bad. Thank you so much for sticking it to the end, and please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the movie, what you think of my thoughts on the movie. If you can, please do all those basic YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.